What is the dirtiest fine print you've seen in a contract? 1. When I sold my last house, the woman who bought it was in her 40s and divorced. I don't think she ever owned a house. We went to closing and all was going fine. Signing documents left and right. Her attorney was explaining everything as he handed the papers for her to sign. They get to the mortgage agreement and he said what the payment will be and the buyer's face turned white. Apparently, she didn't realize that the mortgage payment she was quoted didn't include the real estate taxes. This area has very high taxes. I was so scared she was going to back out and I'd lose the $40,000 down payment I made on the house I was buying. She also didn't seem to understand the terms of the mortgage. It was an interest-only loan for the first 10 years, after which her payment would double. I felt sorry for her, but I wasn't in a position where I could afford to lose 40 grand. She ended up getting foreclosed after 11 years. I sold that house in 2004. This is a good example of why the housing crisis happened a few years later. She couldn't really afford the house, but they gave her the mortgage anyway. 2. I used to store my boat on the trailer at a marina. It was there for 3 years and they had my credit card on file and charged me every month. Out of nowhere, I get a letter in the mail about a $50 charge for not signing some paperwork. I go to the marina's office and ask what that is all about. They tell me that I didn't sign a credit card authorization document. I told them that it was never sent to me, and if it was such a problem for them, how did they manage to charge my card every month? She waived the fine and then it got interesting. She gave me a new contract to sign for my spot. I never had a contract. It was a monthly payment. Then she says you might want to read this. I asked her what I should look for and she said just read it. On, maybe, page 20 it said something like the marina is not responsible to any damage to your boat or trailer, even if it's due to the negligence of our employees. I confirmed that I was paid up until the end of the month, declined signing the contract, and sold my boat to a friend. If you needed an oil change, or anything else, it was common for them to pull the trailer out of your spot to bring it to the shop and return it later. If some rookie managed to hit your boat with the engine/prop of another, and put a hole in the hull, it was all on you. No, thanks. 3. Some years ago I was involved in a traffic accident. The insurance carrier for the car which hit me tried to ignore the whole thing, until I filed suit against the owner of the car. Insurance settled, and then a few weeks later, I got a call from a secretary at a law office which was working for the insurance company. She asked me if I was satisfied with the outcome, and I replied that I was. She then told me that to close out the file, they would like me to sign a document stating that the case was closed. I said, sure, no problem. She sent me the documents, which I read carefully. Then I threw them in the trash. In the fine print, the document stated that I accept full responsibility for the accident, and that I would repay the insurance company plus reimburse insurance company for all the other payments they'd made for the accident, and I'd pay this attorney's fees. All this was very thoroughly hidden in lots of pages of gibberish. I have learned to never sign anything that I haven't studied in detail. 4. An oil company wanted to drill 2 wells on my land. The contract specified 0.5% of the proceeds to me as royalty. I objected and eventually got that to 4%. In Colorado, you cannot prevent them from drilling as they own the mineral rights under the land. After the contract was signed, they waited a few weeks and then said they lost their copy of the contract and would I sign another one which they sent to me. The replacement was back at 0.5%. The number was well hidden on one of the middle pages. I simply Xeroxed my original and sent it back. Never heard from them again. I believe they drilled the wells on the neighboring land and angled over. A much better proposition for me as the wells would have been in the middle of the property with access roads to each. This was untouched original prairie in an area where there is almost no such thing remaining. 5. A coworker and I were given new employee contracts to sign and we saw that if we were to leave the company we could not work as software developers for 3 years. We refused to sign, so the company controller came to us and asked why. After we explained why we wouldn't sign, he said, "Oh, that's not what that means. What it means is that you won't start a new, competing contract firm and steal away employees." So I told him to change the contract language to state exactly what he'd told me. He just kept saying, "But you know what it means." I finally told him that until the contract says what it really means, I wouldn't sign it. He said he'd have it corrected, but we never received a corrected copy, so we never signed a new contract. His explanation made more sense than the contract's language, but I wasn't going to sign away my right to work on blind faith. 6. I was a field construction engineer for a department of the Government of Canada. We were building a 10,000 square foot garage to house and maintain the equipment being used on the site. The contract for the project was conceptually simple and effectively stated the contractor will build a garage in accordance with the attached plans and specifications and will be paid as outlined in this contract. The building was about 98% complete when the contractor casually said to me that, by the way, the contract does not include painting the ceiling. He then advised me to read the contract itself. Turned out that he had found a blank spot on the contract and typed in the sentence, "This contract does not include painting the ceiling." Nobody in our regional office had noticed the addition and had signed the contract. We were stuck. It was clear that the contractor was looking for a large extra work order to now paint the ceiling. Now, one of the key roles of my job was to protect the taxpayer. We were always concerned about not only being honest and fair but being able to demonstrate that we were. On the other hand, we never let anybody screw us, not ever. The steel structure of the building was to be painted a light gray and by good luck, the ceiling was galvanized steel fairly close in color to the gray paint. My solution was to tell the contractor that indeed, he did not have to paint the ceiling but, and it was a big but, he did have to paint the complex steel structure that supported that ceiling. I also told him that since he was not painting the ceiling, He had to ensure that his painter did not overspray onto the ceiling and also that he had to protect my new floor. The cost of masking the ceiling to avoid the overspray far exceeded the cost of just painting the ceiling. At one point, the painter said that it would be far easier to paint everything, and I told him that being a benign public servant, I would allow that, but not if I had to pay for it. He would not do it for free, so I told him to keep masking. As I said, we never let anybody screw the taxpayer. 7. A cohabitation clause in an employment contract. Back in the mid-1980s, when EDS was a big attractive company, I accepted a job offer from them. This was back when Ross Perot was in charge. There was a mountain of paperwork. Never saw so much for a job. I got to one paper that had the words cohabitation clause in smallish print. I asked the HR person about it. He explained that I would not be able to live with a member of the opposite sex that I wasn't married to, including a sibling, unless there were parents in the house. I kid you not. I was 28 years old at the time. I told him that he must be joking around, and he explained that the company has strict rules about how employees spend their free time. I explained that I was living with my then fiancée, and was not going to sign the paper. He said that it would be noted, and if anyone found out, it could mean termination. I had another job offer that paid slightly less in my back pocket, so I stood up, tore up the contract, thanked him for the opportunity, and walked out. I accepted the other job. I felt like I dodged a bullet. I had several friends who worked there, but none lasted more than a year or so. The corporate culture was apparently very toxic.